There's clowns in the woods and they're trying to get us to go out there. Some had knives, some had chains, and some were holding out money saying, "We've got candy for you." This is a quote from one of the 2016 clown sightings. I know I can't be the only one that remembers that. The clowns are coming back and let's talk about it. First, let's catch up the people who have no idea what I'm talking about. The first victim was 17-year-old student Megan Bell in the UK. She had reportedly been afraid of clowns her entire life, and one night in Manchester, a killer, creepy clown chased her down the street. But it didn't stop there. The crazy mass clown hysteria spread to the United States, Australia, UK, and even Canada. It overtook all of the news stations. Public schools were even talking about shutting down completely. There was speculation that this entire thing was a ploy to attract people to watch the It movie. But the killer clown started to lure children into the woods and even attack people with knives. It may have started as a PR stunt, but quickly became something more. One of the weirdest things about the clown invasion of 2016 is that one day the clowns just disappeared. They just stopped appearing. Nobody knows where they went or why they disappeared. Now, I have no way of actually knowing if these are the same clowns, but it is now August 2023 and the clowns have been spotted again.
Story we've been talking a lot about. Creepy clown sightings around the country.
Washington say they're being run ragged, checking on reports of menacing-looking clowns.
Clowns are now reported to being spotted in Ohio, Florida, Texas, California, even Maine. I'm out of time, so go to part 2. I'm alone and you hear a knock, don't answer the door. That was my grandmother's one rule when she left me the family house. I thought it was just the rantings of an old woman. I didn't know how real the rule was until the other night. The house I inherited was deep in the forest, far from bustling city noises. Silence was the unspoken language here, except sometimes you would hear the owls. But the other night when I was sitting in the living room reading a book, that's when I heard it. There was a single knock at the front door. And then I remembered my grandmother's warning. If you're home alone and you hear one knock, don't answer the door. I looked over at my grandfather clock in the corner. It was midnight. I told myself that the knock was just a figment of my imagination. It was just the house settling, or a fallen branch against the door. But then it came again, a single solitary knock. But this time it sounded closer. I was panicking. I just stood there staring at the door. The third knock was so loud that it made the door rattle. There was no more denying it. Something was at the door. If you're home alone and you hear a knock at the door, don't answer it. This is part 2, so if you missed part 1, go back and watch that. The last thing I told you is I heard that knock. I held my breath, hoping that if there was something there, it would just leave. Minutes started to tick by, and then I heard it. It was so faint that part of me thought it wasn't even real. And I know you guys are dying to know what it said. Let me in. I was terrified, and that's when I remembered the attic. If I could make it up to the attic, there was a lock inside. As I ran up the stairs, I could hear the whispers growing louder. Once I got into the attic, I bolted the door shut. After a while, the whispering stopped. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare breathe. Minutes turned into hours, and soon the darkness of light started to turn into the morning glaze. I'm pretty sure Grandma's rule kept me alive, and now I fully understood it. The old house was not just a place of solitude. It was also home to something old, something terrifying. Whatever was on the other side was not of this world. So just remember Grandmother's rule. I never understood why people had a fear of clowns until I met Sprinkles. It was 2019 and I was living in a small town. A circus seemingly set itself up overnight. Our town had never seen a circus before. They called themselves the Circus Macabre. The moment they arrived, I just knew there wasn't something right about this circus. The townspeople couldn't help but be curious about the new circus that magically appeared in town. And as those of you who live in small towns know, rumors began to spread quickly. There was supposedly strange occurrences happening during the performance. And one night I decided I wanted to see the show for myself. When I arrived, the tents were brightly lit and the sound of laughter filled the air. I decided to go into the main tent. The performers were showcasing their acts and the crowd was going wild. But something was off. The clowns with their painted faces and colorful outfits seemed to be doing their act a little more intense than you would think. They were interacting with the audience playfully, but there was something eerie about their demeanor. Their laughter appeared forced and their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. We were about 30 minutes into the show and the audience was no longer laughing. And that's when one of the clowns decided to invite me on stage. My heart was racing and everything in my body was telling me to say no. While I was on stage, the clown performed many harmless tricks, and the audience was laughing. But there was one thing that just was not right. The clown was smelling and at one point even licked me. Thinking about the experience just makes my skin crawl. The days that followed, more rumors began to spread through the town. People claimed to have seen the clowns wandering the town at night, still in costume. Multiple people went missing the month that the circus was here. The town officials tried to investigate, but the circus disappeared just as mysteriously as it appeared. I can't help but wonder, could those clowns still be out there? I may have solved a murder. I'm gonna tell you about it while I take this off. Have you heard of the story of Kate Morgan? Kate was a member of a wealthy Iowa family. In her early 20s, she married a man named Thomas. This is important. The marriage was not a happy one. After 5 years of marriage, Kate ran off with another man named Alan. Then we lose record of Kate for a little while, until 1892 when she checks in at the Hotel del Coronado. Strangely enough, she didn't check in under her own name. She checked in under the name Lottie A. Bernard. She was a quiet guest at the hotel but took lots of baths. And back in those days, someone had to run a bath for you. She told the staff that she had stomach cancer and she was waiting for her brother who was a doctor. But no one came looking for her and no one sent her any letters. After a few days passed, she ventured out into the city to buy a gun. The next night, it started raining extremely hard. It was a storm. We actually investigated this hotel on our YouTube channel, and ironically, it was also storming that night, which honestly is unusual because it's California, it rarely storms. The next morning, her body was discovered laying out on the steps of the veranda. But it doesn't end there. Police were called and it was confirmed that she died of a gunshot wound. But the bullet found in her head did not fit the gun that she purchased. The case was reopened after that fact came to light. In over 100 years, it was never solved. It's been debated by many whether it was self-inflicted or a murder. Some people believe her spirit still resides at this hotel. And since I'm a professional ghost hunter, we decided to investigate. We stayed the night at the hotel and documented all of it. And now, after looking back at all of the footage, I think Part 2 of the Charlie game. The last thing I told you was I was about to open the bathroom. While I tell you about it, I'm going to try to create this makeup look. When I opened the bathroom door, the first thing to hit me was the smell. Then I heard a voice behind me. It was Christina wondering what was going on. I moved out of the doorway so that she could see what I was seeing. That's when she let out the most blood-curdling scream I've ever heard in my entire life. To this day, I can still hear it. And then the lights went out. Christina didn't know it at the time, but this moment was about to change our lives forever. When we looked back in the room, Jonah was gone. The scream woke up the parents. We tried to tell them what had happened, but they didn't believe us. They sent everyone home before I could ask Christina what she saw. I was going to ask her Monday at school, but she never showed up on Monday. She actually never showed up again at all.
I got too many hoes, but they ain't you. You like to put that shit in your nose.